My name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. Today's video we're going to be talking about the golden pothos, or with the Latin name Epipremnum aureum. This is a really common plant, but it is so cool, and we're going to show you exactly why. But first thing first, they are originated from Morea Island from the French Polynesia. It's a super remote island and it's so beautiful. I highly recommend for you to Google up what the island looks like. It's so nice, and it's amazing how a plant from over there, a tiny volcanic island, can spread to the whole world, becoming one of the most common houseplants. And this is just to show how resilient and beautiful they are in so many different kinds of climates. They are a flowering type plant, although we haven't seen them flower in our cultivation for a very long time now. Not to say that it won't, maybe someday it will, but we don't know the conditions that it will flower. And I'm sure in the natural habitat in which it lives in, it's got the conditions that allow it to flower. But these guys are actually cultivated through propagation by stem cuttings for the most part, because you do need seeds from flowers to produce babies. And since these guys don't really flower, you're forced to propagate them, and they propagate so easily, so readily. And I'm going to show you how in a bit. But really quickly, if you keep them in lower light situation, they will revert to an all green leaf. They will start getting longer internodes and they will produce smaller leaves, so they won't like that. And these guys like to be dried out completely between watering. They don't need a lot of watering. Keep in mind that these are plants that are found readily in airports, malls, and hospitals, in the bathrooms. So they don't need constant attention and care. They just need to be left alone. If you water them too much, you will have some of these yellowing leaves that fall off. And if you are underwatering it, of course, it will give you brown tips and it will crisp up. But usually you can see when they're thirsty, they would be a little bit droopy and limp. You fertilize this the same as your other houseplants. I do chemical and I do natural fertilizer, all diluted. And I don't see any pests on these guys. They're very pest resistant. Overall, a very strong plant to have, and it will complete your indoor jungle look. And this is also a very good plant for our beginners. And don't look down on it just because it is a very basic plant that you can see anywhere. It is truly beautiful. If you look at it up close, the yellow is just golden color and it's very nice. And let me jump into the most spectacular part about this plant. When you allow this plant to climb up a pole or a tree, it can get really big, huge split leaves, kind of like the Monstera and the variegated Monstera too, because it does have the yellow variegation on them. So if you allow them to trail down, they will give you smaller and smaller leaves. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you this plant, and I'm going to show you the clip of where I have this grown in. Here's the plant that we're working with, and this is how I've kept it for about 2 months. And it's actually climbing up the vine that I gave it. And as you can see, the leaves are increasing in size as it goes up, and it's gonna get much bigger. And at the top of this moss pole here, I gave it an air layering setup here with sphagnum moss. So it's probably rooted really well. I can see some white roots there, really pretty. And it's basically rooted into this wall. I was supposed to film this video, I think about a month ago, and I just procrastinated, and this is how much it's grown, I think in about a month. So these guys are very fast growers. It gets very good direct sunlight, but keep in mind there's a wall behind it. They don't like to be grown in full sun. They do want to be stuck onto something like a tree or a wall or a moss pole, and they can take really strong light. And when they do get stronger light, they will have this beautiful variegation. If not, they will turn into all green plants. And here's an example. This is exactly the same plant, but when you let it trail down, they will produce smaller and smaller leaves, even though they are getting the same sunlight and the same kind of care. And new leaf is so tiny, look at that. And as you can see, the the main stem here is very yellow. This means that this plant is gonna have very variegated leaves coming up. So this is getting very good light. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to be producing, not this plant, but this one. I'm gonna be creating 2 types of plant. One that is a full pot of hanging basket, or baskets rather, because I'll end up having so many plants. And I'm gonna have at least one plant that I'm gonna grow into this massive leaves. So I'm gonna be filming for a long time. This is going to take quite a while because as you can see the top here, the leaves have actually gotten a little bit bigger than the leaves in the bottom, but I do want them to get monster size. So I will be propagating these and I will be giving you an update all in this video, so stay tuned. Okay, the first order of business, I guess, is to take off this air layering that we did to see how much roots it has. The more roots, the better. And actually, I will go show you later for the top cutting here with the bigger leaves. I'm gonna give this an aeroid potting mix because the aeroid potting mix, in case you haven't seen my video, I'm gonna link it up above. The aeroid potting mix is chunky. It will allow the roots to grip into the root. Sorry, my dad's TV just came on, so I'm a little distracted. It will allow the roots to grip into the potting media very well, giving it bigger leaves. It's gonna fool this plant into thinking that it is climbing up. While the ones that are grown in a full pot, I'm gonna put them in general purpose potting mix. Okay, I don't see a lot of roots actually. This is not a lot of roots. And I see some mealybugs in here. Sorry. But yeah, there's actually a lot of other roots here. And as you can see, Epipremnums, they have these very grabby type roots along the stem. And this is very difficult to take off a mouse pole or a tree, by the way. They really take hold of something really well. Yeah, this is not a lot of roots, so basically I'm going to be propagating it from scratch. For 1 month, I'm really surprised. Okay, I'm going to make the cut right here. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I've prepared a really long moss pole. I believe this is 90 centimeters. I have some rope here, some cotton twine to tie this plant down later, and then putting it in aeroid potting mix here. I'm sorry, this moss pole is so tall, it's hitting my fiddle leaf fig. I'm so sorry. Fiddle leaf figs, they don't like to be touched, so I may lost that leaf. Okay, so I just recorded that portion without my mic on. Sorry, but basically I put this cutting into a pot, and it's a very tight pot, and then I gave it aeroid potting mix, which I have right here in my hand. So I'm going to be potting this up, and this is a very tall moss pole. It's about 1 meter tall, and again the media is going to enable it to put out very thick grabby roots to produce bigger leaves. So hopefully by the end of this growth I can enjoy some really big leaves. And what happens with this plant is that if I actually cut it off here and I remove it of its apical dominance, by the way, you should watch my apical dominance video in case you missed it, because it explains a lot about plant growth patterns. If I cut this off, new vines will appear from down below. It will activate the lower nodes, so it will branch out more, but they will produce smaller leaves, and that's not what we want to do. So we definitely want to keep the apical dominance, apical bud, the top portion up here, and then it's going to continue to grow upwards in a single line fashion, I guess. Okay, and then now I'm going to have to tie the plant onto the moss pole to let it attach to the pole. So I want to keep using a little bit of that sphagnum moss that we had before. So I'm going to put a little bit of sphagnum moss on each node. This is so that it will encourage the roots to root easily into the moss pole. You don't have to do it, but I find that it helps. There, it's done. And then I'm going to go up, and I'm going to do one more. So I'm going to do one last one where I'm going to stuff some sphagnum moss on top of behind the node, I mean. So that's done. That looks actually kind of pretty, don't you think? I'm going to take this off. There. Gorgeous. I will give you guys an update so you guys can see how big these leaves can get over the next few months. And I have a feeling that once it gets to the very top, I'm going to have to air layer it and then start it over from the bottom. So I may have to do that. But when you do that, all these middle nodes, you can propagate them. You can turn them into something else. So nothing's gone to waste. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave this pot as it is with the main plant growing on the moss pole. I'm going to set this next to a tree, set it free and let it climb up that tree. But meanwhile, I'm going to take the cuttings from just over here. That's gonna bush out where I cut it. Oops. Even though I don't really want a bushy plant for this particular guy, but yeah, we're gonna get it regardless. So that's done. I'm gonna move you away for now, and then these are the cuttings, we have so many to work with. The anatomy, and I know that I've shown you this in many of my plant videos, but bear with me. So this is the anatomy of a cutting. You can take two, this is a node, you can take two nodes actually, and this is the root where the aerial root is going to grow and it's going to produce more roots, obviously, whether in water or in soil. And that's Gia, she's crying. She's crazy, I don't know what to do with her. So this is the leaf, it's going to continue to photosynthesize. Yeah! Yeah! Cut it out! I'm so sorry you had to see that. A little bit of a rant. Gia gets a lot of playtime from me. I do play with her, and then when she's out here, she will bark to try to get in, and when she's in her enclosure, she will bark to try to get out. I just don't know what to please her. I can't be with her the whole time. So anyways, let's continue on. Don't get dogs, you guys. I don't know. Plants are much easier. So the anatomy, again, this is the roots. And then, as you can see here, there's a little bit of a growing eye here. I don't know if you can see the bump. Do you see that? Not the black one on top, the little one below that. That is where the new leaf is going to come from. So the leaf here is going to help photosynthesize, it's going to produce energy into the roots to grow the roots, and the roots are going to feed the leaves at the same time, so that they have kind of a system here. And then all that energy is going to go into the new what do you call this, new growing eye to push out a new shoot. But this leaf is going to die off very soon, so you're racing against time. You want to make sure that this appears before your leaf dies off or before your roots rot off. However, if you don't have a leaf, you can also do wet stick propagation, and I'm going to show you in some of my other videos. I'm doing one on syngoniums where you can just literally put this on top of a soil, of a potting mix, and it will root and it will turn into a new vine. But this one is going to take a much longer time, and the new leaf is going to be super tiny compared to the ones that you were grown with the leaf. So we're not going to do that in this video. Okay, so when you see a cutting here with very little bit of roots, it has a higher chance of rooting in water. So I'm going to separate these and put these in water, and then I'm going to start with the ones with a lot of roots first, because if you already have a pot full like this, it's hard for you, sorry, it's not in view, it's hard for you to put these roots in there. So it's much better to, what do you call this, start the ones that are in a lot of roots in an empty pot. So I'm going to find a few of these. This is another one. That's a funky one. So this has roots, but it's got no leaves, but no worries, because this will probably give me a growing eye somewhere, and this is going to be very fast to root. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to put about, I don't know, how many cuttings do I want to put in each one? A lot. I want it to be very bushy, and I do want it to kind of trail down, so it's going to have smaller and smaller leaves over time. I'm not even going to count. I'm not the kind of person that counts or measures anything. I just go by feeling. If it feels full, it feels nice, I just stop. And I'm going to give it general purpose potting mix here. And then I want to make sure that everything's not buried too deep, because you want the new shoots to be able to come out gracefully. It's going to have a hard time getting out if it's buried too deep. And also, where possible, you want the leaves to be facing up, because you want the leaves to be photosynthesizing, you want the leaves to be getting good light. So if you have your leaves kind of in facing down or away from the sun, that could be detrimental to the propagation process. This one is being very naughty. It's much easier when you have a little bit of a moist soil to work with. So that's done. And the last thing that I'm going to do with this is give it slow release fertilizer, just a little bit. I would say maybe 7 or 8. And then I'm going to use some Furodon. This is very controversial, but I do use it now and then, especially since I saw some pests around the leaves. Furodon is a strong chemical pesticide that will kill a lot of things, basically, not just pests. They're very, very deadly to many animals, so I don't really recommend it. And this is another one, so I'm going to moist this so it's easier to work with. And then for this one, I'm just going to start putting the cuttings right into the potting mix, just like that. And then with all of these cuttings, I actually am going to what do you call it? And not too deep, by the way, just kind of barely in the potting mix. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for this. I don't want it to be overwatered. It can get too soggy and the cuttings can die if it's just suffocated in water. The roots does need some kind of air now and then. So I don't really release this outdoors until it's like maybe a few weeks old, when it's established more roots. Because by that time, if you have excess water, the roots will drink it up. But right now, we don't want it to be sitting in too much water. Okay, so I've got 4 pots that are going to be trailing. And then I've got a plant that is up a moss pole that is going to climb up. I also have some in water propagation. Sorry, it looks so messy. I just hose down the table. I love hosing down the messy table after I'm done with my work. But I'll give you guys an update on how these guys are doing. Again, I'm gonna keep these away from the rain, but somewhere bright. I'm gonna water it only when the potting mix is bone dry, because they are easy to get overwatered at this point. So I'll see you guys in a few months. Here's a 6 weeks update on the water propagation. Actually, this one leaf had spider mites, the one that's yellowed up, but I did wash it off with my soap, so it's fine now. I believe it spread to the other leaves, but I also washed the other leaf, so that's great. I actually procrastinated this, but as you can see here, everybody's rooted really well. They're so easy to propagate in water. In fact, a lot of people just leave them in water, but I don't think they can live forever in water. So as you can see here, some of them has already put out secondary vines in the water, like that one there. So I'm gonna pot this up into a potting mix. I am not gonna show you an update on the other potted ones yet because they're not ready. I haven't seen enough growth, so I will be back in a few weeks. 4 months after the water propagation, and this is taken off like crazy. So it started putting up these like long vines that kind of vine around. By the way, I'm in my new home, so it's a little bit of a change of environment, but it's like leaning against the glass window there. And the more variegation that it has, the more light that you give it, the more variegation it has. And those that are facing inside, I think it will become a little bit more of a green color. So if yours revert to green, that means that it's not enough light. So these guys are the perfect light meters. And actually the variegation is actually quite nice. Very, very pretty. It's very milky. I don't know if you have seen one of these up close before. This is that top cutting. It actually didn't grow as fast or as big as I would like to. I'm gonna put my palm here for comparison. So this is almost as big as my palm now. It hasn't fenestrated. I think it's gonna take a while. I'm really just stunned by how beautiful and smoky the variegation is. And it's got a bare leggy stem in the bottom, as you can see here, because it's lost a lot of leaves. But my guess is that this may need something rooted into the ground. My guess is that this will have to be repotted, I think, because I think it's probably very, very root bound. So for these to put out bigger leaves, I think I'm gonna have to repot it. Hang on, I'm gonna take it out. Of course, I made a mess because I used one hand to pull it out. But it's actually not that root bound if you look at it. I mean, these roots would really benefit from having a slightly bigger pot so that these fatter roots can develop secondary roots. So I'm gonna plant it a little bit deep into the pot. Or you know what I may actually do, because this is so leggy. Hang on, let me think. You know, okay, next plan B. I'm gonna pot this in a bigger pot, let it grow. And when this plant reaches the top of the moss pole here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the next growth point like this into another pot. So it's going to grow into that pot. I'm going to add medium to it so that it's going to propagate itself into the new pot. Alright, so this is 5 months later, and let me show you the results. Ta-da! I am so sorry, I failed to give you fenestrated leaves. And if you watch this channel often, you know that I don't always succeed. And let me tell you why. First of all, I neglected this plant. It gets moved around quite a bit, and now it's against this wall. It's between the shelves. It got sunburnt badly at some point when this received full sun from changing sun directions. The new leaves look fine though, really beautiful, and variegation on these. Love the variegations. But yeah, I kind of left it against the wall and it's just grown into it, and the leaves are just now becoming pretty small. So I'm gonna end this video here, but I'm gonna do another one where I challenge myself to grow this into a fenestrated plant. I may have to change my setup a little bit, but I'm not giving up. But this video took 11 months to complete already, so I really need to close this now because there are some really good care tips in the beginning, and we did create a lot of babies, and those are some of them are sold, but because they're so inexpensive, they're also slow-moving items. We have given a lot away to the neighbors around the neighborhood, so really glad about that. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm at Botanist on Instagram if you want to DM me on any questions regarding plant care propagation, and watch out for the video in a few months' time where I try to grow this out properly this time. And I guess I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.